p.m. As is our normal process, this meeting is being recorded, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Executive Committee meeting for Community Board 2 for the month of May. With that, I'll walk through the agenda as laid out. Our first vice chairperson is Mr. Leonard Jordan. Our second vice chairperson is Ms. Barbara Zala-Gringer. And our secretary is Jessica Thurston. And thanks to the members of Community Board 2 for electing me. I serve as chair of the board. And so with that, that is the welcome for tonight's meeting. I will ask for, I think I went through the protocols. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. Again, because this is executive committee, most of the items will require a response from the members of the community board. There will be appropriate times for members of the community to ask questions and you will properly acknowledge. But until those times happen, I'd ask that you would please choose the chat to share your comments and your thoughts. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Meyer, second. Is there a second?
You can't
Second.
see people. You have to talk up.
Bill Flournoy, second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the review of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our previous meeting? If you have any noted corrections or comments, would you please send them into the board office and we'll make the necessary adjustments. With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved. Seconded.
Thank you. Jessica, you got who moved in second? I think it was Mr. Jordan and Mr. Meyer.
I didn't get it, Mr. Jordan, but perfect, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. As far as the chairperson's report is concerned, Taya and I met recently and we were able to make appointments to the board. To be clear, make appointments to the committee, I'm sorry, based on board members who were appointed to the board. To be clear, what we did was we made sure that every board member had a primary committee. And we wanted to make sure that there was a balance. And I'm happy that we have a balance for the primary committees. We have a limited number of individuals who at one point we asked to serve as being assigned to a secondary committee because of lack of participation and not having enough numbers in some cases to meet quorum. I chose not to disrupt that. So there's a limited number of board members who have a secondary committee. That will remain the same, but it's not the preferred. We would prefer to have everyone serve on at least one and then have the option to visit as many committees as you'd like to keep a structure that makes sure that the process is fair and balanced. In addition, we've continued to keep all the public members that are serving on the respective committees in place. So there's no changes there. I'm in the process of engaging with board members to ensure that the chairs and vice chairs are properly filled. We have a few committees that at the moment don't have a vice chair, and so we're actively working to make sure that we have vice chairs in place and that there's a full complement of leaders and co-leaders for each committee. So you'll have an update on that shortly. Beyond that, I don't have any other information to share at this time. I will say that there are a few longstanding board members who are no longer serving because most of them chose not to. I think work and other things get in the way, and we appreciate those board members for their service and the work that they've done to make sure Community Board 2 does the work that we're chartered to do, the work that our bylaws govern us to do, and the work that we do successfully, collectively. Even when we don't agree, we still do it successfully, peacefully, and collectively. So I want to thank everyone for their service and continue to thank you all for your continued service. With that, I'll tell you, unless I'm missing anything, I don't think I have anything else to report this evening.
Sounds good, Chair Singletary.
Okay, great. Let's move into our action items. The First item we have is item number 5. We have a executive briefing and a Q&A from the Department of City Planning. Do we have the representatives here tonight?
Yes. Yes.
Great. So if you're here, I'd ask that you would announce yourself and your colleagues, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair Singletary. My name is Amrita Mahesh. I am an urban designer at DCP's Brooklyn office and the liaison to Community Board 2. I am joined by Emily Bachman, a senior planner in DCP's Brooklyn office as well. She'll be monitoring the chat and supporting during the Q&A, but we have a brief presentation to start with. Just give me one moment. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Perfect.
Looks great.
Thank you for having us again, and we're excited to be here today to share City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality, which is the first of 3 projects that the Department of City Planning is developing as part of the broader City of Yes initiative. 2 other proposals, Economic Opportunity and Housing Opportunity, will begin more public engagement later this summer. And they are distinct and independent proposals which are being staggered the rest of this year and into next year. Many of the elements of the carbon neutrality proposal are urgently needed, and they are aimed at delivering zoning relief to home and building owners who are trying to undertake smart retrofit projects to cut energy costs and help the environment, but are prevented from doing so because of zoning regulations. First, I want to take a minute to frame our conversation. It's important to emphasize that we are facing a climate emergency. It is largely driven by global carbon dioxide emissions. Carbon dioxide makes up the vast majority of the country's greenhouse gas emissions, 80% in 2019. In 2016, the world community joined together to sign the Paris Agreement, a vision to curtail human greenhouse gas emissions in order to limit overall global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, and thus prevent further environmental damage associated with climate change. Here in New York City, we've been implementing this vision through a number of initiatives under the umbrella of achieving carbon neutrality by reducing the city's emission 80% by 2050, or 80 by 50 for short. So what do we mean by a carbon neutral city? It's a city in which we are focused on reducing operational carbon emissions, where we've reduced our overall energy needs. And to do this, we'll need to retrofit almost every building in the city to become highly efficient and to reduce wasted energy. It's a city where we've cleaned the grid. And to do this, we'll need to switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy, such as solar and wind. And it's a city where we've electrified all remaining energy needs. And this includes our vehicles, our buildings, and other structures as well. And this means moving towards electrically powered technologies. As you can see in the chart to the right, the key driver of our city's carbon emissions is by far our building sector. 10 years ago, in 2012, the department issued Zone Green, the first comprehensive overhaul of zoning to support emerging green technologies like rooftop wind and solar. The carbon neutrality proposal in many ways is a follow-up to Zone Green, a chance to revisit older rules and update them in light of many of the technological and regulatory changes. These include, since 2016, the focus on decarbonization coming from the Paris Agreement and 80 by 50, feedback from architects, engineers, and advocates over the years about issues and recommendations to improve current regulations, and updating the zoning to reflect the Climate Mobilization Act at the city level, especially Local Law 97, which will impose fines on large buildings which do not reduce their carbon emissions, as well as the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act at the state level, which in particular set ambitious solar and energy storage goals for the city. Development of this proposal began in March when the City of Yes initiative was announced. Since then, we've conducted outreach to stakeholders across the city, practitioners, and other subject matter experts to help us ensure that this proposal will be helpful to those who are trying to add solar, electric vehicle chargers, or heat pumps to their homes and businesses. We've held 4 open to the public info sessions as well. and we partnered with the Urban Green Council to convene a group of technical and policy experts to review and provide feedback on an initial draft of the proposal. Along the way, we've engaged in conversations with local stakeholders and partner agencies regarding what zoning changes may be needed to help achieve our collective climate goals. And from these conversations, we've identified a number of ways that zoning can be modified. Tonight, we'll review 4 key goals that this proposal seeks to support, as well as the 17 specific zoning changes we've identified to help achieve these goals. The first key goal is supporting the decarbonization of our city's energy grid. Illustrated on this slide are initiatives already underway at the state or city level. These are not part of our zoning proposal, but they are the context in which our planning work is situated. By 2040, New York State is legally required to achieve a 100% renewably based energy grid. To support this, we will be developing large amounts of offshore wind and bringing in more clean hydroelectric power from upstate New York and Canada. This also means putting all of our rooftops to work, generating energy across the city. To utilize energy from offshore wind and from rooftop solar, our grid will have to become more smart and more decentralized, and with resources spread throughout the city instead of limited to utility sites in outlying areas. To support this smarter, more decentralized grid, we will also need to rely on energy storage, which is essentially large batteries. To support the ongoing work of cleaning the grid, New York City zoning can help in 5 areas. Rooftop zoning allowances can be modified to ensure that there aren't any limitations holding us back from our solar goals. In many districts, for example, there are current limits on the amount of rooftop that can be covered by solar canopies, and this proposal will update rooftop allowances to ensure that a roof can be completely covered by solar. With regards to parking, we need to take a similar approach for our 8,000 plus acres of open parking areas, ensuring that zoning is updated to always allow solar canopies over parking lots. If you want to generate clean energy for utility customers elsewhere in the neighborhood through the community solar program, zoning considers that a commercial use. But we need to recognize that there are large residential campuses, hospitals, schools, and colleges in residential districts where community solar would be appropriate or a great fit, and zoning needs to be updated to allow for this. Energy storage, we will need to ensure that safe FDNY and DOB reviewed energy storage facilities are located where they are needed most. Energy storage is currently not allowed in residence districts where customers need access to clean and renewable energy. Zoning needs to be updated to add specific rules for energy storage and help facilitate its rollout across the city. Onshore wind also faces strict limits in today's zoning. The zoning proposal will create a new tool that can be used by future applicants to submit onshore wind facilities for a special public review process with the City Planning Commission. The second goal we're seeking to support relates to eliminating fossil fuels from our city's million-plus existing buildings, almost all of which will be around in 2050 when we need to have achieved carbon neutrality. These buildings are by far our biggest sources of carbon dioxide emissions, and to improve these buildings, we'll need to retrofit virtually every single building to retire oil or gas-powered furnaces and boilers and replace them with new highly efficient electric systems and improve the efficiency of exterior walls, windows, and roofs to keep the heat and cooling inside. It's important to note that 2 laws adopted by the City Council in 2019 and 2021 that are crucial here for large buildings, which are defined as buildings greater than 25,000 square feet. Local Law 97 will begin to impose fines if they do not cut their carbon emissions. Fines will begin in 2024 and will increase through 2050. Second is Local Law 154, which requires that all newly constructed buildings are electrified from the get-go. Fossil fuel-based equipment will no longer be allowed in new construction. Within this context, zoning can support the decarbonization of buildings in 3 key ways. Zoning can provide more flexibility to accommodate the increasing need for outdoor equipment, such as heat pumps, which cannot be located in building basements or cellars and can be located above the zoning height limit or on building rooftops. Zoning needs to ensure that where someone is trying to add thicker insulation or reclad buildings by removing an old facade and replacing it with a new energy efficient one, that they don't run into zoning obstacles and obstacles that prevent them from undertaking the project altogether. Zone Green, which was the proposal referenced earlier back from 2012, previously awarded a small amount of additional floor area for buildings that were built to higher than building code requirements, better than code buildings. And this provision can also be updated to reflect the latest energy code and best practices for the future. With regards to costs and implementing these retrofits, many funding sources at the federal, state, and city level are available. The New York City Accelerator Program is run out of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, and this program is intended to help connect property owners with technical and financial support as well. The third goal is seeking to support the decarbonization of private vehicles. There are currently 2 million private vehicles registered in New York City, and less than 1% are zero emission. By 2035, New York State in Albany has indicated that all new vehicles sold in the state will need to be zero emission, and this will be a long-term transition. To help owners make the switch to electric, federal and state initiatives are underway, but one key issue that zoning touches on is where you can park and charge your electric vehicle. Addressing this need will be key to helping New Yorkers make this switch. And finally, this proposal also aims to support alternate modes such as bicycle, micromobility, or mass transit. Within this context, zoning can support this goal with 5 key changes. With charging facilities, first allow commercial charging facilities in all commercial and manufacturing districts. They are currently prohibited in about half the city's commercial districts. We also want to allow building owners to designate a portion of their existing parking spaces to be offered as public EV charger shared parking spaces. And the same rules that currently apply today for car sharing vehicles in existing parking garages or lots. We also want to allow for more flexible use of public parking lots, public parking garages, and commercial accessory parking facilities by allowing car rental, car sharing, commercial vehicle storage, and public EV charging within these facilities too. And expand special rules that currently apply predominantly in Manhattan to allow for more automated parking facilities to be available to everyone citywide. And lastly, we are also looking to update parking rules to acknowledge the need for public bicycle parking and allow bike parking facilities in commercial districts. Finally, our last goal relates to reducing our city's stormwater and solid waste and helping eliminate carbon emissions associated with both of these waste streams. We can reduce stormwater runoff by promoting greater permeability on site. This means less water flowing into energy-intensive treatment plants. We can reduce energy associated with hauling and processing garbage by reducing the amount. Up to 45% of our waste stream is organic material that doesn't need to go to a landfill and can be reused within the city. And we can reduce carbon emissions associated with our food by promoting local food production on our city's rooftops. Within this context, zoning can help contribute to a better environment in 4 key ways. Permeable pavers clarify zoning's paving rules to ensure that permeable paving, which allows water to infiltrate directly into the soil, is always allowed. Update our zoning's street tree requirements to allow for new high-performance tree bed types, such as connected tree beds and rain gardens. The zoning resolution today does not reference or account for composting or recycling, so we're looking to add specific rules clarifying where these uses are allowed to help these sectors grow. And rooftop greenhouses are allowed only on top of non-residential buildings, but to build one, current rules require you to obtain a certification from the chair of the City Planning Commission. By streamlining this requirement, we will allow DOB to review applications for building permits and cut costs and simplify the process for those looking to grow food on their community rooftops. That concludes our overview of the 17 specific zoning changes we've identified to help support the larger goal of decarbonizing our city. As this is a citywide zoning text amendment, all 59 community boards are concurrently reviewing this proposal with their borough boards and borough presidents. In July, the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on the proposed changes, and the City Planning Commission will subsequently vote on approving or modifying this proposal and pass it on to City Council, where the council will have 50 days to review and ultimately adopt the proposal. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
So thank you for that thorough and comprehensive presentation. We wouldn't expect anything else from Brooklyn City Planning. And with that, let me open it up to board members who may have questions. And in this case, I'm asking if you would raise your hand digitally. And with that, let me start with the first three that I see. I'm going to start with Jessica.
Thank you, Chair. What a fantastic presentation. Thank you for outlining all of that and so efficiently. I'm really thrilled to see this proposal. I work in sustainability. I teach sustainability. I wanted to ask you, in this district, we have several historic districts, and often it's the rules around historic districts that are particularly limiting, particularly around the envelopes of the building or, making windows more efficient. How are you factoring in those limitations to this plan as well? Because some guidance around that would be so helpful.
Absolutely. I can take a stab at answering this, and Emily, please jump in. We've worked very closely with both DOB and LPC on developing these rules. The overlay of historic districts and what would be required of contributing buildings and individual landmarks is something that will not be touched by this proposal. We're simply looking to allow for any zoning related changes to move forward without any hindrances. Emily, please jump in if I missed anything.
Yeah, that's right. And LPC will continue to review modifications to the exterior of buildings in historic districts and landmarks. So that jurisdiction still applies and is not impacted by this proposal.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Chair Lenny. Has the Department of Housing Preservation Development or Department of Buildings expressed any concerns about rooftop solar? I like it. I've been on a number of rooftops over the years in housing, but has HPD or DOB has any concerns about the solar panels on the rooftops themselves?
I don't believe they've raised concerns, but Emily, can you share a little bit more context? I do know that from a safety perspective, we have coordinated closely with DOB on what needs to be factored in to allow additional coverage of solar. And HPD's developments often include solar panels and try to achieve higher standards of sustainability. So we do think that these rules will help them achieve higher energy efficiency across their portfolio, but I'm not aware of any particular concerns.
Yeah, I'll just add, both agencies as well as FDNY were highly involved in the solar proposal. Right now, solar is allowed on rooftops in New York City, but there's the setback limitations and coverage limitations limit it to 25% of a roof. That makes it less attractive for folks who are trying to offset their energy costs, and allowing larger installations can help offset more, and also just make the process of installation worth it for folks. There are some examples where NYCHA in particular has gotten special permission from the mayor's office to cover whole rooftops in solar. So we have examples of places where 100% solar coverage on a rooftop has happened in New York City through special approval. What we want to do is make that normal, make it easier for folks to do that across the city.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes, thank you, Chair Singletary. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'd just like to, you may have mentioned this before, but I'm not sure. I know a good many of the commercial and residential buildings either heat with oil or gas, or heat and hot water. Are there going to be any incentives for these folks to, and funding for them to, change their method of, heat and hot water in the future with these new, with solar and electricity and the heat pump?
Thank you for the question. The main program that the city is running is housed at the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, NYC Accelerator. And this program does provide both technical guidance as well as financial guidance as well, and funding opportunities to implement these retrofits.
Thank you.
Daughtry? Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
I'll pass.
So, okay, great. Amir?
Thanks, Mr. Singletary, and thank you for the presentation, Amrita. One quick question though, and it's related to Mr. Jordan's question. Has there been any study on the impact of these forced rules on efficiency, on the cost of housing, and how that'll affect housing within New York City? I mean, we have fairly old housing stock, a lot of oil-based boilers, so forth. So do we know how that'll affect the housing pricing for construction and refurb that'll be needed for a lot of these buildings?
I don't have the answer to that specific question at this time, but I do know that our team has reviewed research and reports by other organizations that have looked into things like cost-benefit analyses, projections for the current building stock and what it would take to get to this goal of decarbonization. But I don't have specifics at the moment and can try to follow up. Emily, was there something specific we wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that for Local Law 97, the implementation of fines is staged. So it goes into effect last for affordable housing to give buildings that have less access to capital a longer time to make those modifications before fines start being imposed. So it's definitely a consideration within the policy framework that we're responding to. But I'm going to take note of that question and hopefully come back with a better response.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, thank you. I've been putting questions in the chat and I was wondering if you had a chance to look at them. One of the things I'm concerned about is the grid itself, the electrical grid in New York City, whether it'll be able to handle the increased load. And in addition to that, delivery costs. If we're going to be taking power from upstate and Canada, will that increase the delivery costs of electricity to homeowners?
Thank you for the question. What we are aware of at this time is that Con Edison has committed to this goal of having 100% clean grid by the year 2040. And I believe there's a report as well, I'm forgetting the name, but it kind of outlines their pathway to get there and their broader goals to help specify how the city would be equipped to handle these sort of ambitious goals. But that is on the existing infrastructure side of things. With regards to the cost of what it would take to bring this energy from upstate New York and Canada, I don't have the answer, but can certainly look into it and follow up.
Yeah, and I just put a link in the chat to a report. It's kind of a deep dive on New York City's grid and specifically asking and responding to this question about can our grid meet the needs from building electrification. I think what I'll add is that a very large portion of the proposal that Amrita just showed you is about increasing efficiency by helping facilitate retrofits and things that decrease energy need per capita, right? So if we remain inefficient, leaky buildings and we go electric, that is a problem. But if we seal up our buildings and make them more efficient, then each one needs less energy. So that's a huge part of our proposal. It's definitely a both and situation. And we're very conscious of that. And I think the other thing I'll say is that we're really responding to this like incredibly ambitious climate policy atmosphere. Our proposals are in large part informed by practitioners trying to come into compliance with our goals and realizing that there are places where our current zoning is limiting the ability to make those energy efficiency upgrades and to install energy generation and storage and the things that we need in order to make this whole thing possible.
Well, listen, thank you again for the wonderful presentation, very insightful. I also want to thank those who asked questions. I like for these discussions to be interactive, so thank you so much. I am assured that this will not be the last conversation, and there'll be more information to come. But thank you again to the representatives from City Planning. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So moving on in the agenda, we're up to item number 6. I was talking to Taya, and that's the beauty of now having a district manager. I have somebody to talk to instead of talking to myself. And Taya was able to have us kind of walk through, the way we bring items before the exec committee. And I know for a period of time, we kind of, and I'm gonna use the term, got away from what we would do in the past. And a lot of times we would bring items to the full board that we didn't have a chance to discuss and review at the exec committee as had been accustomed to the past. That process wasn't wrong in and of itself, because we did something one time doesn't mean that you always have to do it. But somehow or another, I miss, as a chair, having the insight of members of the executive committee to discuss things amongst ourselves before we got a chance to talk things out at the full board. And then in subsequent conversation, I wanted the chairs and co-chairs to be fully abreast of certain items. So with that, I want to go back to something that we used to do. And so what we have on the agenda now are items that will go before the full board for action, but at least it gives us a chance to be informed and have a little discussion beforehand. And so with that, what's old is new again. I'm going to ask Mr. Gordon and then Mr. Meyer to walk us through the 2 items, the items that they have, but that are before their respective committees, so that we can be aware of them before they go to the full board. So with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Gordon for land use.
Thank you, Chair Lenny. Okay, we met Wednesday and had a number of items. We also, the biggest one, of course, is a ULURP for 180 Skimmerhorn Street. Now that is a parking lot. Well, parking, it's really more of an outdoor garage that's at Skimmerhorn, State, Hoyt, and Smith. Now it currently has about 140 spots for motor vehicles to park in. They have moved under the ULURP application to raise that up to 245 spaces. They'll be putting up extra, I guess, he was trying to think of, like elevated things so that the cars could park on top of other cars, so that they'll have more space and they'll have more, be able to accommodate. And also they were looking to do some expansive work on curb cuts so that it comes in on, I think, on one street and coming out of the other. We had an extensive discussion on this one. Many people felt that because the location, especially closer to Bourne Hill and downtown, many residents and many other people felt that this is a area which has strong transit connections, subway and buses, and they felt that expanding the capacity to have more cars come to the spot would be a hindrance. It would not be good for the community. It would not be good for people in the area, and it would not really be needed. And I guess the overall feeling on that side was that we should not be encouraging more cars to come in. However, on the other side, and also many people from many parts in the community, especially from the eastern side of of our community board felt that they needed this space in order to be able to park. I would say that the public transportation on the eastern district side of the district rather is a little bit more sketchy. Buses do come, but not as often. And the rail transportation is a little harder to get to, mainly the C and the G trains, which are a little bit harder to rely on. So it was a lot of intense discussion on that one. And after a lot of discussion, we voted 5-4 in favor of the application to allow them to go from 140 units, 140 spaces to 245 spaces. So that ULURP will be coming up. Before I forget, I should also thank first our chairs and my co-chair, Daughtry Kostarfin, for a lot of the work that she's been doing and keeping things moving and giving up with ideas. And also thank Karen Johnson for as secretary, who's worked very hard on pulling our work together. She's been very hard given the work that she does and the personal things that she has to do. So that I could thank her. Also like to thank Jessica Thurston, who helped on this particular one, since this was a big hearing with a lot of things that we had to do. So I had to thank Jessica for helping out on that one as well. Now, we had a number of Landmark Preservation Commission certificates of appropriateness. We did vote in favor of all of them. Now let's go through them briefly.
Actually, Carlton,
First one, yeah.
you can skip those. I'm talking about the major item, which was the ULURP item.
Okay, all right. It was already there. Yeah, okay.
I know you were. I'm trying to save you some oxygen. That's fantastic.
Okay, I'll get my oxygen tank out. Okay, so other than that, well, I'll just say we voted in favor of all. We had several of them, and we voted in favor of all.
Okay, great. Is there any questions for Mr. Gordon or any thoughts around what the committee is about to recommend for the full board? As you know, this was a ULURP item, so when we go to the full board, it'll be a roll call vote. But just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of what's happening beforehand.
I have a comment when you're ready.
I'm looking for questions first, so hold on.
I have a question, Barbara.
So,
Yes,
Barbara.
Yes, Barbara.
Yeah, I was at the ULURP hearing and the beginning of the meeting, and then last night I went to the tape to try to find out what the actual vote was. And I did hear at that time there was concern after the vote that it was a missed opportunity to perhaps put some conditions on an approval vote. And I was wondering if this were an appropriate time to hear some suggestions for what that might be, or we need to wait to the full board meeting.
Sorry, Barb. I don't know if you can repeat your question.
There was a discussion after the vote and about that there could have been that there wasn't a full opportunity to discuss the matter, and that had there been more time, perhaps there could have been some discussion about how I guess the motion could have included some limitations, perhaps related to the approval. And I was wondering if
I okay, yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if we could hear that tonight.
Now I remember what you're pointing to. Yes.
Or do we need to wait to the full board meeting to hear that?
No, it's
wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
Was,
Carlton, I got it. We will not
okay.
have a second meeting. That meeting took place.
Right.
Individuals went to ask questions, gearing towards items that were already discussed in the meeting. We'll do that whenever it's in the environment. That's what I have for people to now have to review in this rehash the meeting. So we're not going to do that. So we'll put it in the right context.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. Daughtry?
Thank you, Mr. Singletary. I wanted to be sure to speak up about this, partly to, support what Carlton has already summarized and also to prepare you for what lies ahead. This was an extremely contentious meeting, and I will say for myself that I feel very strongly about my own recommendation, but also because I felt like that we wasted an opportunity to negotiate a community benefit with this ULURP. And I feel very strongly about that. And I'm still kind of smarting from it, to be honest. Without going into the rehashing the meeting, I just wanted to say that I think that we should be prepared for what is to come. This issue is not dead yet, despite the 5-4-0 with 3 absent T's vote. So thank you.
Thank you, Daughtry. I appreciate that. Sid, your comment.
Okay, I attended the meeting as well, and I did not stay for the vote. I listened to the people and I decided not to speak. And I will speak now because I'm not going to be present at the meeting in June. We have taken away a lot of parking lots. We just turned down, when they did the 280 Bergen, we voted to allow them to do away with the required parking for that one. And we didn't get any additional low income housing because they weren't able to do that. So we are losing parking continuously in the neighborhood. When they do congestion pricing in Manhattan, we are going to get the overage of all those cars that are going to go, that will no longer go into Manhattan, but will come into Brooklyn and go around our neighborhood. We don't have residential parking permits yet. So all those people, some with permits, some with fake permits, will park on our streets, and our streets will become increasingly crowded. We need additional parking. Now, I'm not pro parking particularly, but this is already a parking lot. All they're doing is expanding from, I think the permit, they're permitted 150 spaces now, but they only have 114 there. They're going to 245. So they're increasing it by increasing the density of parking. We are allowing people to increase the density of housing, and all those people moving into the neighborhood at 280 Bergen, some of them will come in with additional cars. People are not coming with totally without cars. We are now at a point where we have more cars registered in New York City than have ever been registered before. And there has to be an accommodation.
Sid, I'm gonna ask you to wrap it up.
I'm about to. There has to be an accommodation made for those who park and for those who want their neighborhood free of parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Great, thank you, Chair Singletary. I'm not going to rehash what Sid just said.
Yeah,
but I
I'm
will
only
say,
looking for questions, by the way. I'm not looking for comments. I'm looking for questions. The committee already had this meeting. We're not going to rehash the meeting. I'm looking for questions. If you have a question, the floor is yours. If not, I'd ask you to hold it to the general body meeting.
I was only going to state why I made the motion.
Yeah, I don't, that's not important right now. I appreciate that, but that's not what I'm looking for right now.
Not a problem.
Any other questions? All right, great. Thank you. Next up, for transportation and public safety, they have an item they want to bring before the full board. And so I'm going to turn that over to the chair, Sid Meyer. Sid, I think you're on mute.
I did. Actually, I think we have two. All right. One is the Livingston Street Transit Priority Study, which we did a letter with comments about. The other is the pedestrian ramp review for the Fulton Ferry Historic District. What the Livingston Street Transit Priority is adding two bus lanes on on Livingston Street and changing the traffic flow on Livingston significantly, and also removing parking and making additional changes that will allow deliveries to be made in a particular way that would make that street more, I don't know, more useful to the buses, so that the buses will be able to get priority. Now, we had a long meeting on this one. We made recommendations to the city to make changes. The presentation is in the chat box. I'm not going to go over the full presentation, but we voted 10-0 or 10-0-1 or 10-1-0, but 10 in favor of providing specific comments to the Livingston Street Transit Priority Study. And it includes for them to do some more studies and to do some more, so to rethink some of the stuff that they've proposed. And, you know, they show I don't think you want, I don't want to, unless you want me to, I'm not going to go over the full presentation because that's what's done at the committee.
Yeah, you're catching on. That's perfect. No need to go over that.
So that's what we voted for. And we will do an action memo for the meeting that Emily Blount will have to do, who's in Morocco now, but she'll have to do because I'll be in Hamburg. I will try to be on by, I will try to zoom in, but I will be on a ship and I probably will try to do it without video. So I will try to, it'll, you know, at 2 o'clock at midnight, I will try to be on the meeting as well.
It's okay. That's why we have co-chairs. So I'm
Well,
sure
I
if you
understand.
can't do it. I'm sure if you can't do it, you'll be fully represented. I think you'll be fine.
The second issue is the pedestrian ramp review in the Fulton Ferry. This is part of the city's requirement to add pedestrian ramps at all or significant number of corners in the city of New York. Now, this one is in the historic district. They've made it so that the LPC has reviewed this as well, but it's ADA compliant. It's an interesting proposal. This is a 1-block street, all right? That this is on the corner. On one of the corners, there were lots of comments made about people had questions about the design, and we presented that, but will be an ADA compliant and change the corners significantly on this block. We all of us thought, I think in general, that there would be better places for this, but this is the place that the city has done. And we voted to approve the design. Again, 10 in favor, 1 opposed, and no abstentions. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Any questions, Barbara?
Thank you. I just wanted to check on the display. It appears that Livingston Street changes would be between Gorham and Flatbush. I just want to confirm that.
You're talking about Livingston?
The Livingston proposal. Yeah.
It will be from, they will make, it will be a one-way street from Gorham to Flatbush. Besides the bus improvements, they're going to make pedestrian improvements. They're adding bulb outs. They're adding pedestrian safety areas. They're going to add a bus loading zone. They're removing 1 bus stop at the Bond in Livingston, going westbound, I believe. And they're making significant changes.
So that whole area is going to be one way?
Correct.
Okay. What's the, that's to help buses?
The buses will be 2 ways, but it'll be a 2-lane exclusive bus lane. All right. And the other part of the street will be 1 way.
Interesting. Are there other streets in the city that are similarly set up? Because I haven't seen any.
Where they have a 2-way bus lane in there, and
Yeah.
the rest I honestly don't know.
I'm assuming there are 4 lanes. 1 lane for buses going west and 1 lane for
No,
buses
no,
going east
the 2 bus lanes will be connected.
together.
Correct.
Okay. And then 2.
And then there'll
So
be,
are there bus lanes on the south side or the north side?
the bus lanes will be on the south side.
Okay, thank you.
And someone says 14th Street has a similar arrangement.
Seeing no other questions, I want to say thank you. I still believe it's helpful for the exec committee to know what's going on instead of hearing about it the first time, like everyone else. So thank you for this dialogue. I'm sure we'll get better at this, but thank you. So with that, the next item I see on the agenda is for committees to report. Mr. Jordan, I'm going to ask that since there should be nothing controversial on the committees to report, if I can call on you to continue with the rest of tonight's meeting on my behalf.
Certainly, Mrs. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, take care. Okay, next, my name is Leonard Jordan, First Vice Chair, Community Board 2, folks, and committee updates. First, we'll have Economic Development and Employment, Mr. Flanoy.
Thank you, Co-Chair Jordan. Hi, I'm Bill Flanoy. I'm the Chair of the Economic Development and Employment Committee. My co-chair is Denise Peterson, and my secretary is Kate Gilman. We had our meeting the first Tuesday of the month, gave my full presentation to the full board, so I'm not going to go over again with the exec committee. You all heard that. Since then, what I've been doing is I've been meeting with the stakeholders of the district one-on-one and having meetings with them. The most recent one I had was with Brooklyn Tabernacle, and I met with Lincoln Fritz, the associate pastor at Brooklyn Tabernacle, to find out what his needs were, his concerns were, and what I could help him out with within the district. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. If anyone has any questions, just raise your electronic hand as we move forward. Health, Environment, and Social Services, Mr. Brandon Smith.
Good evening, everybody. Hope that you all have been having a good beginning to the week. So as I'm sure you know, my co-chair is Ms. Nicole McKnight. We were very fortunate that on our meeting earlier this month, when neither Ms. McKnight or myself could lead the proceedings, that our secretary, Ms. Thurston, led the meeting and did so perhaps better than any meeting I've chaired this year, in that we were in and out of there in under an hour and a half, which was pretty wonderful. The liquor licenses you all heard about in the general board meeting, we had a bit of a discussion about the health fair, and this will be one of our last meetings before the event itself. So I just want to use this as an opportunity to encourage anyone who is not already plugged in to try to do something to help out with our big event. We are definitely grateful for anyone who can help on the day of with setting up, directing people around, or breaking things down. For anyone else, there's going to be a wide range of activities there. We've got a hearing truck that is going to come and test people's hearing. And I don't know if anyone who doesn't work on planning health fairs is aware, but this is actually a rather unique thing within New York City. So I encourage you, if you can, to come and take advantage of that, get your hearing checked. I'm definitely going to do that. And we're going to have a whole range of other service providers, and we're still working out the partnerships with some of the public schools, but it's going to be a really wonderful event. And we have flyers to distribute. If you want to hand out flyers to people you know, just message me and I'll be happy to get you flyers. We have copies of these, and our public member / Red Cross fellow Richard Morrow made over 1,000 copies of these flyers for people to be to have information spread. And we've been going to Just tonight, I was in Ingersoll community meeting and the Whitman and Farragut meetings to try to spread information about this and listen to what the people there are interested in. I will just say, you know, if there's one thing that I could express too to the community board about what's come up in the Farragut meetings is just the amount of concern people have about homelessness and people coming and sleeping in their hallways and doors not being able to be closed and the lack of facility upkeep in that regard. So I want to make sure that there's some awareness of that. But otherwise, I hope to see many of you at the health fair, and we should have some information which I will post, and we'll have our next meeting at the beginning of first Wednesday in June. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, and thank you and your co-chair, Ms. McKnight, and certainly thank you, Ms. Thurston, for jumping in the other day also. And certainly the health fair, we can, the office has copies also, right, Mr. Smith?
They should have it digitally. If the office would like me to bring over physical copies, I can do that too.
All right, well, as long as I think we sent them out electronically, I'm not sure, but anyway, so this way everybody's aware. Thank you so much. Youth Education and Cultural Affairs, I'm sorry, Parks and Recreation, Ms. Barbara Zeller-Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Good evening. I do not have a co-chair at the moment. Our wonderful co-chair, Andrew Lastawecki, has retired from the board officially, but it's still coming to some meetings. And our terrific secretary is Thomas Husey. And we met last on Monday, May. We had our annual update on the status of capital projects for the Brooklyn parks. And Davey Ives, the chief of staff of Brooklyn, was good enough to present that report. As you may know, remember that projects were the capital projects were halted during COVID. They're now catching up. Most projects seem to be subject to a 1 to 2 year delay, so things been finished by now are just starting. A lot of the projects are slated to start in the fall. So just a few highlights from that meeting. Susan Smith McKinney Stewart Park has been open for a year and is being heavily used. Great news. It's adjacent to the Farragut houses. Commodore Barry Park, the restroom renovations and installation of ADA ramps are slated in the fall. Renovations for the large field were delayed due to a remediation project, and the large field with the installation of sports lighting and replacement with synthetic turf are slated to start in spring 2024. That's a year from now, to be completed a year later. There is going to be a scope meeting in June to discuss the basketball area, the one area that has not been touched yet. Apparently there's $10.5 million that has been earmarked for that project. Camden Plaza, a number of projects are being undertaken there, including making the bathrooms in the War Memorial ADA accessible. Northern section of the lawn is being paved, paths, and the lighting. Starting in the fall, they will be reseeding the lawn and should be finished by the end of the year. General lawn area, there are a number of issues being addressed. Walk past there at all late and you see it's really totally under construction. They are going to, as to the general lawn area, making repairs to the turf, and that's under a special multi-site contract where repairs usually take just months. Renovation of the standalone comfort station, supposed to be started in the fall of 2022, is now slated to start in the spring of 2024. But again, it's part of a multi-site contract, so it shouldn't take too long to complete. Kyler Gore, which is installing new play equipment and other changes to the park. Construction is slated to start in the fall with a fall 2024 completion. There was discussion at our meeting again about concerns about synthetic turf. I think it's an ongoing issue. I think Davey Eyes said back to us on it, but clearly the committee is concerned that if new synthetic turf is being installed, that the issues of the toxicity of any of the content should be addressed. So we're waiting to hear back from Davey. Also, in terms of Fort Greene Park, there is an environmental assessment statement report being completed, and Davey assured us at our request that we will get a copy of that report and hopefully next meeting, and that we will have some summary at that meeting of the contents of that report. So our next meeting is Monday, June 12th. And we did get some assurances from Davey that they are about to have discussion with South Oxford Park Friends Group, which, as you know, we're raised concerns about that. Previously, hoping to put better signage in, restricting dogs to limited areas of the park, and hoping to address the issues concerning the hours. If any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Alagrenga. Next, we'll have Youth Education and Cultural Affairs, Ms. Betty Fibush.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I have nothing. We did not have a meeting since the last time I spoke, but I have good news in that the last group we spoke to called Losaurus, which does what's called a wraparound program for at-risk youth that are involved with multiple agencies. These are young people who are involved with the police, with truancy, with ACS, etc. That's multi-agency involvement. We connected Losaurus to the District 13 leadership, the school leadership of the schools that are in the Whitman and Farragut houses that are part of the catchment area for Losaurus, so that they connected and they'll be working together on referrals, referring young people that need this type of support and mentorship. So we're very connected with this school.
Okay, I don't know if that's me or is my Wi-Fi.
I think we've lost Ms. Fibush.
Oh yeah, it may be Ms. Fibush's Wi-Fi. Okay. All right, if she comes back on.
Hello?
Yeah, Betty, good. We lost you for a minute.
It says I cannot start my video because the host disabled it. I don't know. Can you hear me talk? You don't need my video.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you much better without your video on.
Okay. So what we're hearing from a group called Read 718, which is a nonprofit that provides tutoring, especially in reading, for young people who are from low income households that need help with reading. And it's a free service. So we're eager to hear more about it and connect that group to our schools. That's what we do. So yeah, so that's this Wednesday. And we're looking forward, I hope, to new members and additional leadership in our committee and continuing the work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fibush. And just for your information, you might know this already. When you're having Wi-Fi problems, a lot of times if you come off a video, you're able to still speak, and it kind of mitigates the effect of the shaky Wi-Fi. Okay.
Yeah, because outside, I usually do this inside, so that's the difference. I apologize for any difficulty.
No problem. No, definitely. Thank you so much for your report. Finally, okay. Finally, Finance and Personnel. My name is Leonard Jordan. I'm the chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee, and my co-chair is Mr. Brandon Smith. We actually will be meeting on May 25th. So I have more to report after that. Last meeting, we actually approved our operating budget other than personal services, which went to the full board and passed. So that's all I have to report as far as that's concerned. We're going to move on to the next item, number 8. Any other executive committee business?
Mr. Gordon, this is John Dew, and I would like to speak at an appropriate time.
All right, well, we're getting close to the community forum, so go ahead, Mr. Dew.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jordan. The Transportation and Public Safety Committee met last week, and Mr. Meyer did not give a report on a motion that was made and rejected by the Transportation and Public Service Committee. I made a motion to ask the community board to ask DOT to study the 7 blocks that are closed off on Willoughby Avenue. Community Board 2, imagine 7 blocks in your neighborhood closed off. That's what Willoughby Avenue closed street represents. It's not open streets. Streets are meant to convey traffic. Streets are meant to accommodate the residents that live on the block. So when you close the street off, you create loads of issues. What I was asking for is for DOT to come in and review the closed streets, 7 of them. The committee did not accept that request. I don't understand that. When I joined this community board over 20 years ago, and I'm not a member now, that is exactly the reason that I joined. Community Board 2 was not reacting to the community. I don't understand how the Transportation Committee could vote to not entertain my motion. So I am asking Community Board 2 to explain why Transportation and Public Safety can vote to not entertain a motion made by a committee member. They actually voted to not entertain my motion. I never heard of such a thing at Community Board 2. Unfortunately, you have to understand that the folks that voted in favor of not entertaining my motion were all white. It's just a fact. And the motion pertained to Willoughby Avenue, which has a large Black population. Community Board 2 cannot get involved in this kind of nonsense. I don't know what else to call it, but it's racist on the surface. Community Board 2 has to address this. This is extremely important. It is a hazard for the community. 7 blocks of closed streets is not ADA compliant, and it is a danger for the emergency and basic services that are interrupted for 7 blocks. Imagine 7 blocks of Hoyt Street closed off. Imagine that. But that's what happened on Willoughby Avenue. I will also acknowledge that the closure of Willoughby Avenue has affected services and restaurant businesses on Myrtle Avenue. And full disclosure, I am chair of the Myrtle Avenue Business Improvement District. I have restaurateurs telling me that their patrons are complaining that they can't find parking. With open streets and all this other kind of stuff, they're losing business. So I'm asking Transportation Public Safety to support my request to have DOT come in and study the impact of open streets. And you did not hear about that tonight. So you need to ask yourself why you're hearing about it from me and not from the chair. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dew. And it's duly noted, your comments.
I want to make one point. There was
Well,
no,
one second, Mr. Meyer. I'm just saying, Mr. Meyer was asked to report on the review, the committee actions for full board ratification. He wasn't giving his full report there, just like Mr. Gordon didn't. So that's why anything else that went on in that meeting. So in the full board meeting, I'm sure he will be giving, or Ms. Blount will be giving a full report. But it's duly noted. We're not going to have a discussion here. We're not, this is committee business, and certainly all the work is done, as you know, Mr. Dew, in the committee.
Sir.
So we thank you for your comment, and it has been noted. So we're going to go on to community forum. Is there anybody that wants to address the executive committee? Do we have anybody, Ms. Mueller?
It doesn't appear so.
I'm sorry?
We do not have any hands raised.
Okay. All right. If no one is going to address the committee that's here from the community, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
seconded.
Okay, was that Mr. Gordon and Mr. Meyer, I believe?
No, Mr. Flournoy and Mr.
Oh,
Meyer.
Mr. Flournoy, okay. Ms. Thurston, did you get that?
You can take it.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Aye.
Thank you so much, folks. Have a blessed evening.
You too, sir.
Thank
too,
you.
sir.